Hey, everybody, this is Bob Goodwin, and welcome to another episode of Career Club Live. Thank you so much for investing a few minutes with us today. Our episode today is brought to you by some free resources we're offering on the career.club website. If you'll just navigate to for job seekers, and then there's a section on there called Making Your Own Weather, which is the name of our job search masterclass. But we've got some really valuable but free resources that we're offering to new friends of Career Club. So I'd really encourage you to check those out. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and comment. It really does help. And the same with whatever podcast platform you might be listening to this on. Just leaving a rating and a review is super helpful. It drives the algorithm, as you know. So we really appreciate you doing that. Today's guest, I am really excited about. Melissa Grabiner is a global HR and talent acquisition leader, and you probably know her on LinkedIn. She has a huge following, 200,000 plus followers on LinkedIn. But more than that, she drives a very high level of engagement, talking about career and job search topics, and does it with a great deal of empathy and feeling in a way that I know resonates with her followers, which is why she does so well with them. And so with that, Melissa, welcome to Career Club Live.
Oh, Bob, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy and excited to be talking to you.
No, it is quite mutual. So before we dive in, we're going to talk, just for listeners, we're going to talk a lot about job search strategies, techniques, things to keep in mind. Melissa, as I've already said, is a global expert on the topic. We might know a little bit about it to a career club. And as Melissa and I have gotten to know each other, there's a lot of resonance in how we approach things, but we complement each other. I think there's going to be just some really effective and valuable nuggets for you guys. But before we get into all of that, Melissa, as is our wont, we like to get to know you a little bit. So just some very easy, brief icebreaker questions. Where do we find you today? Where are you born and raised, and where are you now?
So, I was born and raised in Chicago. I've lived here my entire life. I actually went to undergrad as well at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Yeah, I've been in Chicago my entire life, and the winters are very difficult as I'm experiencing right now with the snowstorm. But
Right.
the summers are great, and that's what keeps me here.
No, Chicago's a great town. I've worked for a couple companies that are headquartered in Chicago, and I love being downtown. It's a ton of fun. You mentioned school, so we've already got that out of the way. So you went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Go Illini. Just a little bit about your family.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I've been happily married to my husband, Craig, for over 25 years. We have two sons. My oldest son is a junior in college. He's at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. And my
Ooh.
younger son is Charlie. He's also at University of Illinois, and he is studying neuroscience.
Whoa, holy cow. Well, too bad you guys didn't have smart boys.
Yeah, I always say they take after their father in that regard. But
I
yeah,
don't think
my
that's
husband and I
true.
are very blessed. We just became empty nesters, so it's been an adjustment for me for sure. But they're happy and
Mhm.
thriving, and as a mother, that's all I want.
That's all you can ask for. That's so true. We have four kids, so my empathy level is really high.
Oh my
Um, and then just very quickly, because we set this up as, your global HR and talent acquisition leader, do you mind just painting a brief picture of your career arc and what you're doing now?
Sure. So the bulk of my experience was at a company called Takeda Pharmaceuticals. I was there for 18 years. It actually started as Baxter Healthcare, and then throughout the 18 years, there were a couple of changes of hands in terms of the organization. So Baxter spun off into two separate entities. One was called Baxalta. I went with the Baxalta company. 6 months later, Shire Pharmaceuticals purchased
Mhm.
Baxalta. Then I went with Shire. 6 months after that, Takeda purchased Shire, and then I went to Takeda. So it was 18 years, but always with the
Mm.
same legacy company. For the
Yep.
first 10 or so years, I was a senior HR business partner, and my job was predominantly employee relations based. So working with employees and our legal team on all sorts of issues. The company, or I should say, the business that I supported within Baxter was growing very, very quickly. And the senior leaders of the business tapped me on the shoulders to start from inception the talent acquisition function for that business. So when they asked me to do this, I had no budget, I had no headcount, we had nothing to go on. But all of our individual sites were managing the staffing on their own, and the leaders felt that there needed to be some consistency within that process and how we kind of grew and developed the branch of the company. So I was given at that point, I was given a budget. I was able to hire as many people as I felt I needed. And I basically built out the entire infrastructure for the department. By the time I left the company, I had 11 direct reports. We were hiring about 3,000 employees globally, which constituted at the time 48% of all hires within Takeda. It was a very, very fast-paced business that I supported. Hiring 3,000 people with a headcount of 11, we were a very lean machine. But I built out the entire infrastructure, processes, everything that you name it that had to do with talent acquisition was really my responsibility. It was an incredible run. I ended up leaving the company after 18 years and don't regret 1 minute of my time there. It was the job and experience of a lifetime. I am currently working at a company called One Digital, working within the Christine Matthews Consulting arm of that. And what I do now is I'm a
Mm.
senior talent acquisition leader by title. And I work with various clients, predominantly in the San Francisco area, mostly biotech and pharma startups. And I help them with either, completely putting together the department, building out the infrastructure, putting together an applicant tracking system, creating processes, procedures, hiring manager playbooks. I have other clients where I do strictly hiring, anywhere from a non-exempt employee all the way up to, the chief technical officer and everything in between. So I've been at this job
Wow.
for about 2.5 years. And what's really nice about this job is that I work with a variety of clients. And I really, really love the biotech pharma space. I think it's very, very dynamic. And knowing that I am working with these companies that are making the products that ultimately go into our patients to save their lives is very, very impactful. So looking back, I feel very blessed with the career that I've had. I mean, certainly it hasn't always been easy, but looking back, I wouldn't change it for anything.
No, that's phenomenal, and it's so cool that you've kind of gotten to your why. Not only just what
Mhm.
you're good at, but why you enjoy doing it so much.
Mhm.
Last question. You talked about your boys. Now that you're empty nesters, what do you like to do when you're not building world-class talent acquisition teams and processes?
Yeah, so I'm actually a certified yoga instructor. I teach 5 yoga classes a week. It is my passion. It is what I love to do more than anything. I have been practicing yoga for about 15 years. And then about a year and a half ago, woke up one morning and said, that's it, I'm getting certified. It was something that it was always on the back of my mind of what I wanted to do, but either due to work travels or raising my sons, there was never the right time. And then last year, again, one morning I woke up and said, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. No more
Mm.
excuses. That day I signed up for teacher training. And yeah, now I teach 5 classes a week, and it's the best thing I've ever done. And I am a perfect example of if you have a dream, pursue it, and you're never too old to follow your passions.
Mm.
So,
Amen and amen. Good for you. That is very, very cool. Um, so we're going to dive into job search topics because that's definitely something of mutual interest and obviously of high interest to our listening audience. But before I go there, when I introduced you, I talked a little bit about, you've got a significant number of followers, a couple 100,000 on LinkedIn. But what's more impressive to me is the level of engagement, Melissa, that you're able to drive when you do a post. And I wonder if you could just help people understand what it is that you post about and why you believe your posts do so well with your followers.
sure. So I think my posts do well is because I'm very authentic and very understanding of what job seekers go through. I post a lot about just motivation for job seekers. Don't give up, always be your own best advocate. I talk a lot about HR practices, about working in a toxic environment. And I think a lot of the things that I post about are just, they resonate in the hearts of my followers. There are some times where I post and it goes crazy. And I'll receive, 10,000 reactions, over 1 million people having, reviewed it, or the level of engagement. But I think it's because I put myself in the role, in the shoes of a job seeker. When I left Takeda after 18 years, I was scared to death. I mean, as much as you would think someone like me knows how to put a resume together, I hadn't put a resume together in 18 years. And so I never really thought about having to do it until I was faced with having to do it. And so I have so much empathy for people that are looking for jobs. I am very passionate about the candidate experience. And it saddens me when I receive messages from people, private messages, direct messages of their horror stories of, I interviewed with this company 6 times and I was promised an offer, and I never, to this day, 6 weeks later, heard back. And so on any given day, I receive at least 100 direct messages from people all over the world. Predominantly, they are job seekers, either thanking me for my content or sharing their stories with me. A lot of
Nice.
times, these people are also asking me to post about what happened to them, and sometimes I do that. Someone once asked me recently, how do I come up with these posts? And to be honest with you, I work out every morning before work. And that is when my juices are flowing. That's when my creative hat is really
Mhm.
put on. And the vast majority of the time, the posts and the verbiage just come to me. I don't think about it a lot. I don't methodically map it out. They just come to me. But having the voice of empathy for job seekers is what I think has really drove the engagement levels. And I will continue to be a voice for job seekers. I will continue to champion job seekers. And I will continue to talk about the toxic work environments that too many people are a part of, and how I feel that is such a horrible thing for employees to have to endure. But I know, when I receive these messages from people and they have thanked me and told me how much my posts resonate with them, that is why I do what I do. And the more people that
Exactly.
contact me, it just keeps me going, because if I can make the difference for one person, or if my that I post about can help one person find a job, then I know that I'm doing the right thing, and I'll continue to do it.
Well, again, our whys are very closely aligned, and for people, you know, I think this maybe would be a good way to start kicking this thing off, which is your posts resonate because of empathy and authenticity. Like I really, really understand what you're talking about. Like just having some quiet time, and you're not listening to a podcast and watching TV. You're just doing something that's kind of keeping you busy, but it allows your mind to go, and you're playing back things that you've heard, read, right? Whether it's in DMs, like you're saying, or a conversation that you've had with a candidate, and it's like, yeah, that's a story that I know is going to resonate with people. That's a common
Right.
experience that people
Mhm.
feel. And that you're not trying to over engineer the LinkedIn algorithm and how can I use enough hashtags and emojis and whatever. You're just writing the truth as you're hearing it and feeling it from your audience, and then kind of playing that back to people. The other thing
Mhm.
that I would say about that, Melissa, is I think that is highly translatable to, and I don't want to go all the way into this just yet, but in your messaging, in your, like, when, whether it's your resume, your LinkedIn profile, answering, tell me about yourself, like being your authentic self sells. That's what people want. And so maybe we could start off just talking about self awareness, and I know that that's
Sure.
a big thing for you, and how you would and how you do counsel people to kind of get to a level of self awareness so that they know how to communicate kind of their true values.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think part of the reason why my engagement has increased so quickly, and continues to increase every day, is because I do post authentically. So I'll give you a perfect example. I posted last night about a situation I was in a couple years ago where I had two job offers, and one job offer was a higher salary, but um, it required me to come into the office. And I had another job offer at the same time that was a lower salary but allowed me to work remote. And so what I posted about was, I think I started the post with, this is my remote working story. That was the
Hmm.
first line. And then I talked a little bit about the fact that these were my options and I chose the lesser salary so I could have the work life balance because at the time both of my boys were in high school and I wouldn't have changed that decision for anything. So being there for my boys in the morning, being there when they came home from school, and always just being there for them, these are times and precious moments that you can never get back. And so for me, the salary increase that I would have gotten had I worked out of the office, that didn't matter to me because what matters to me is the time that I spend with my family and pursuing my passions. I always can make more money. I think anyone can always, there's always ways that you can make more money, but you never can get that time back. And now that my boys are in college and I'm an empty nester, I am so grateful for the decision that I made because now I can look back on these last 3 to 4 years and say, you know what? I wasn't spending that time commuting. I wasn't spending that time in the office. I was spending that time not commuting. And instead, I had that precious time with my kids, which is something that I would never be able to get back. So that was a post that I did last night. It was just an authentic post about an experience that I had and the post went crazy. And I haven't looked recently in terms of the engagement, but I think even like last night alone, I mean, I had well over 1,000 likes and just hundreds of comments. So that is an example of posting from the heart. And I think when people post their own personal stories that resonates with other people, that's when you start really getting that engagement on LinkedIn. And I'll tell you too, and you're a perfect example of this, Bob, where and we'll talk about this perhaps in a little bit regarding the power of LinkedIn, but LinkedIn has enriched my life in more ways than I can even tell you. I mean, it's allowed me to meet amazing people like yourself. I've been working with companies, very select companies that I'm very select about, but on brand partnerships. And I've just met incredible people from all over the world. And as a matter of fact, the job I have now, I found on LinkedIn. I reached out to the president of the company. She responded immediately. 2 weeks later, I was hired, and I've been at this job for 2.5 years. So I think that as time progresses, LinkedIn is just getting bigger and bigger. And the more people that embrace the platform, I think the more their lives, like mine, will be enriched. It's just getting
Oh,
yourself
well,
out there. It's okay to be vulnerable and just be your authentic self.
yeah. So I want to pick up on something because this is going to be very job seeker specific. Um, but you just said about how you reached out directly to the president of the company. Were you responding to a job posting necessarily?
Nope, I was
Okay.
not. As
So,
a matter of fact, mm-mm. I knew I wanted to stay in the biotech pharma space. And I did my homework on potential organizations and I came across her name is Christine Matthews. She is, when I joined the company, it was called Christine Matthews Consulting. Right after I joined, One Digital actually kind of merged with Christine Matthews Consulting. So right away, I became an employee of One Digital. But I found Christine through my own research and I sent her a nice message on LinkedIn and I explained a little bit about my background and why I was interested in her organization and what she built. And that got the dialogue going. And within 2 weeks, I had a job offer. And this is one of the best jobs that I've ever had.
okay. Okay. So I'm going to explode. This is like completely not rehearsed. I have never heard that story before. Is that true,
Mhm.
Melissa? Have you ever told that to me
No,
before? No.
no.
So, what you just described is what we teach people in our job search masterclass that we call making your own weather. And what we find is just way too many job seekers are reacting to job postings. And there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with job postings. I mean, that should be part of the mix. But what way too few candidates do is be proactive. And so you knew your value proposition. You knew that you're very strong in HR. You knew that you knew biotech. So that intersection right there creates a unique value proposition that you've got some very specific experience that should be interested to the right audience. So then you moved and you had identified firms that you were interested in and you knew what
Hmm.
you wanted to say to them. Then you identified the decision maker at the company and you did your research and you did homework on her. And so you were prepared and you crafted something that was very specific to her. It wasn't generic. It wasn't just, kind of cranking out a spam email to a million people hoping somebody responds. You wrote a very specific communication to Christine. She followed up with you because it was relevant. You resonated with her. And as you said, you had a job offer in 2 weeks. The reason that I'm like doing cartwheels is I had the exact same experience, which was really the origin story of Career Club, where I was doing my networking, reached out to a bunch of people very specifically, very intentionally. I knew what my value proposition was. Mine was interesting though, because it broke a little bit different. One of the people that I had reached out to said, that's cool. I know why you reached out to us, but this company over here, that's who you want to talk to. I just left there as their TA leader like 6 weeks ago. They're looking for you. Here's the hiring manager's name and phone number. You said told you to call him, and I had a job offer in 3 weeks. Like, but that's why I call it making your own weather. We're not
Mhm.
complaining that it's snowy and it's minus a million degrees and this all suck. It's like, well, that may all still be true, and you may have not been at Takeda anymore, and you wish it,
Right.
like whatever, but it is what it is. How do I go and exert ownership and agency for my life,
Mhm.
and do it in a smart, strategic way? And that, yeah, I just love what you're saying.
No, Bob, absolutely. I see so many people posting on LinkedIn about I applied to 500, no joke. I mean, I've seen posted people, I've applied to 500 roles and I've heard back from 2 companies. And I am always a big believer that we always have to take our careers in our own hands and we always have to be our own best advocates. And so when people reach out to me on LinkedIn, which happens multiple times a day, with these sort of stories where I don't know what else to do. I've depleted all of my resources. No one is responding to my job application. And the one thing I say to everybody is network as much as you can and then network some more.
Mhm.
Statistically, I actually read an article last week. It was an article written by one of the LinkedIn news editors that said that 3% of people find their jobs through a job posting. And someone who's a recruiter, I absolutely believe that to be true. Because if a company is posting a job, you might see over 1,000 applicants. What is the chance that the person is actually going to get a job when they're competing with over 1,000 people? And plus, two, a lot of times the companies fill the job internally, they've put the position on hold. So, statistically speaking, it is a very low percentage that people actually find their jobs through a job posting. And that is why I always recommend, and I post about this as well, not only should you network to find the right opportunity, but do your own research like I did. I mean, if I didn't be proactive about my job search, I wouldn't be at the job I'm at today. And there's so many tools out there that can help job seekers. I mean, LinkedIn is a perfect example where you can find anything you need to find in terms of who to contact at the company, what are their titles, what are their positions. It takes a little bit of time to do that, but the reward at the end of the day could be so great because that could be the difference of landing a job or having your resume be put in the applicant tracking system black hole.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. So let's talk about networking and then networking some more.
Mhm.
Um, what does that mean to you? When you're talking about networking, can you kind of break that down a little bit more on exactly what you mean? Because it means different things to different people, and I want to hear your take on it.
Sure. So I'd first like to say, the, just the sheer importance of networking. Networking is by far the most effective way of finding a job. And some of the reasons why I think it's crucial for a job search is I think the first is it provides access to potentially hidden opportunities. So, with my experience, many job opportunities are not publicly advertised, and so what networking does, it is allows the job seeker to tap into a potentially hidden job market by learning about openings through personal connections, and even thinking about, we all have a network. So I'll take myself for example. I have a circle of friends, and I have family. But my family and my friends, they have connections. So it's not only about like first level connections. It's who do you know and who do they know.
Yes.
So networking again is a broader kind of circle. outside of just who your first connections are. And I think the other thing with networking is it helps to build relationships, and it's authentic relationships. And these relationships can provide valuable advice or insight and even support throughout one's career. And it's really important that people understand that networking is a two-way street. It's not only about take. It's a give and a take. So networking is not only what you can do for me, but what can I do for you in return? I have networked with so many people throughout my career. And the one thing that I always do is say, how can I help you? Like, is there someone in my network that I can introduce you to? Is there perhaps an opening at my company and I can get your resume in the right hands? But it's a mutual beneficial relationship. It's not just let's take, but what can I give? And I
Yeah.
think that's the key to networking.
Maybe, okay. So again, this is why I'm so excited to have you on. The very first article I ever wrote on LinkedIn was called "The Most Powerful Question You Can Ask." And it was born out of a networking meeting where a job seeker was reaching out to me, and we met, of course, at a Starbucks. And the gentleman's body language was full of shame. He was apologizing, even as we're meeting, for like, "Hey, Bob, I know your time's really valuable. I apologize for taking up, too much of your time. Thank you so much for even spending a few minutes with me." And I'm like, "Kevin, I want to meet you. Like, I'm here because I want to be here."
Mhm.
But what was implied in all of that was a lack of self worth, that he didn't feel like he had anything to offer. And that was the genesis, kind of like you said, where the way your creative juices get flowing. I'm
Mhm.
like, there's a lot of people I know that feel this way. And
Yeah.
what he was ignoring was his professional experience, his things that he's just smart in, his network that he has. He's got lots of assets. And so, because he felt like it was not an adult to adult conversation, it was more like an adult child conversation,
Mhm.
you know, and or kind of, you know, like he was begging. So it wasn't like take. It was more like begging, which is really humiliating. But when you can
Mhm.
go into a meeting like, "Hey, no, my objective is to be mutually beneficial," and I'm not even talking about trading, like bartering, because that's kind of gross too. But it's like, no, I genuinely want to learn about you, what's important to you, and if there's a way that I can be helpful to you, like I
Mhm.
really want to be able to do that. And it just really changes the dynamic of a networking meeting. But
Mhm.
also, I think, particularly for somebody who's been in job search for a while, absolutely preserves their self worth and their identity, that they don't feel like, again, like they're begging, but they're actually, bringing value to somebody else, while at the same time, hopefully that person is bringing some value to them as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, networking is, I'm a big proponent of networking. I remember a couple years ago, I was a guest speaker at the HERMAC event, which is the HR Management Association of Chicago. It's a big organization where a lot of HR people are a
Mhm.
member, and I was asked to speak at that event. And I met a handful of really dynamic people, and I still to this day am in touch with them. And I was, before the event started, they had an hour of time where you can network. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go an hour early and I'm going to meet as many people as I can. And that is exactly what I did. And to this day, there are still 5 or 6 people that I talk to all the time that I met at that event. It was a networking event.
Mhm.
And when I was looking for a job before, right before I got the job I have now, I reached out to all of them and just to let them know that I was looking
Mhm.
for a new position because they were a part of my network.
Yes.
And every time I talk to them, I find out, how are you? What's going on in your world? Is there anything you need from me? It's having those relationships and maintaining those relationships through time, but it always should be a two-way street. It's never just, what can you do for me, but it's what can I do for you as well.
Melissa, what would you say to the person who's like, "I hear you, but it sounds like you're a pretty outgoing person. I'm pretty shy. That makes me very uncomfortable thinking about what you're saying. And yeah, I do it, but I'm really kind of, gritting my teeth the whole time." But what would you say to that person?
Yeah, it's a hard thing for people like that because I happen to be outgoing and going to these events is fun for me, but I certainly understand that not everyone feels that way. And what I would say is keep in mind what you can offer, because we all have something to offer, whether it be just knowledge or what we can offer our own connections, we can offer our thoughts. I mean, we're all dynamic people that have our own things to offer, but it's breaking out of that shell and saying, you know what, networking is as hard as it could be. At the end of the day, it could be a really valuable thing. And just knowing that you have the confidence, we all have reasons to be proud of ourselves. So it's showing that confidence, and trying to elude that confidence and trying to break out of that shell for the
Mm.
purpose of really establishing new relationships and meeting new people. But I get it. I mean, not everyone is an extrovert. I
Yep.
happen to be, so it's easy for me. But I know a lot of people that are introverts that have actually asked me this very question. I've received messages on LinkedIn saying, I know networking is important, but it's really hard for me to do that because
Mhm.
it's out of my comfort zone. So, my
That's right.
suggestion to them is that go into any conversation or any event with confidence, knowing what you have to offer, and try to just break out of that shell because it will be so worth it in the long run.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And just to build on that, the other thing that I would say to people, and I think actually most people fall into the category of not extrovert, particularly in like this networking kind of thing, is
Mhm.
just think of it as like a friend making exercise. Hey,
Mhm.
tonight I'm going to go an hour early and make hopefully one new friend.
Yep,
Like,
love it.
like,
Mhm.
just be positive. And I think maybe the most common thing that I hear from people after they've landed their new job and they've been in job search for a little bit is, I wouldn't have chosen this for myself, having to go look for a new job. I met so many nice people.
Mhm.
I've expanded my tribe so much, and I feel so much richer for the experience having met so many great people.
Bob, that's so true. And I am one of those rare people that I actually enjoy looking for a job. Like when I left Takeda,
Yeah, that's
I was
weird, Melissa.
I know, but I was excited about it. And I knew it might not have been easy, but it allowed me, like looking back, realized it allowed me to learn about all these new companies. I've met a ton of great people. It expanded my horizons and my knowledge so much just by having that experience of looking for a job. And I realize that, most people don't say, oh, I'm going to raise my hand to look for a job. But if you have to look for a job, I always feel like try to have a good attitude about it because the situation isn't going to change. Either way, you have to try to find a job, but look at it as kind of like an adventure. Like this could
Yes.
be fun. I'm going to get myself out there and I'm going to meet a lot of great people and I might land an awesome new opportunity. And I'll say this too. When I left Takeda, I was scared to death. I hadn't looked for a job in 18 years. This company was mostly all I knew. But looking back, it was probably the best thing to happen to me because I'm in a job now where I'm very happy. I've met a ton of new people. I've worked with some incredible companies, and it got me kind of out of my comfort zone of the
Yep.
known of being at one place for so long. But looking back, it was the biggest blessing in disguise. And
Yeah.
that's what I say to job seekers, like this could be a blessing in disguise. You might not see it now, but you'll see it in time.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things that we offer job seekers is called radical resilience. And so,
Mhm.
finding yourself out of work is generally not a well received event. And so, we need to draw on some strength, to power through it. And one of the key things in radical resilience is benefit finding. And it's kind of what you did. Hey, I'm going to learn new companies. I'm going to learn new industries. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to learn some new stuff. I'm going to meet some really
Mhm.
nice people. I might even be able to help some people along the
Mhm.
way. Right. And so I'm going to go at this with this sort of adventure mindset and find the good in this process.
Yep.
That makes all the difference in the world
Mhm.
because the way I say it, Melissa, is the road to yes is littered with no. And there's so
Mhm.
much rejection that's involved in a job search, and it hurts and it's
Mhm.
not fun. And there's no way to put a smiley sticker on top of that and make it okay. But when you
Mhm.
can, one, acknowledge, like, I know this is not going to be easy, this is not going to be a layup, but there are going to be some good things that happen, and I'm going to be looking for those good things. it just having just that positive, good intent kind of a mindset makes all the difference in the world for something that is inherently not easy.
A perfect example of that is I worked with this woman at Takeda who was laid off, and I've done everything I could to help her find a job. And I sent her a message over the weekend, and I said, "Tell me what's going on. What's going on with your job search? Is there anything I could do to help you? Is there any connections I can make?" And I continue to ask her that, but it's important that I make sure she understands that I'm here to support her. She wrote me back last night, and she said that she found a new job, and this past year, while she was out of work, was a huge growth year for her in terms of her own kind of development. She said
Yeah,
she learned a lot about herself. And that's a positive to have that time that you can learn more about yourself, because sometimes looking for a job, you learn more about what you can take, what you can't, how much you can tolerate. It's a
that's
it's
right.
a learning experience for anyone going through
It
trying to
definitely
find a
is.
new position. Hmm.
I want to shift gears here a little bit. We're still in the realm of job search. In our model, we talk a lot about attitude, which is what you and I just talked about. We talk a lot about networking and outreach and sort of the activity, and those kinds of things are very, very important. But there's a big chunk in the middle that I'd really like to tap into your expertise on. And that is your personal brand, your messaging. So, the analogy that I use with people is, you can be very busy networking and doing lots of activities, but it could be like buying a Super Bowl ad. You're in front of a lot of people, but if your commercial's no good, like that was not a good use of time or money. You need to make sure your commercial is really good first, then go buy the TV spot and be out there in front of a lot of people. So, when you're maybe you're kind of going in your talent acquisition hat, but whether it's tell me about yourself, why you're so interested in this role, anything that kind of gets at what the candidate's value proposition is, their why. If they haven't nailed that down before they're going to market trying to find a job, I think that's a huge mistake and can
Hmm.
end up burning up networking opportunities, burning up interview opportunities, and just setting you back in your journey that much longer. How do you talk to people about getting their message and really kind of understanding their unique value proposition?
Yeah, well, what I always recommend to job seekers, to all job seekers, and I know not everyone is comfortable doing this, but to make sure they have an optimized LinkedIn profile, right? And
Hmm.
because I know for myself as a recruiter, when I'm recruiting for positions, I always look on LinkedIn. There
Yep.
are a lot of people that are in job search mode who either don't have a photo on LinkedIn, they have a very, very
Yeah.
slim summary, but there's nothing in there that tells me who this person is, what they believe in. And so what I instruct job seekers, and I say this because a lot of times job seekers come to me, actually this happens all the time, where they'll say, "Can you look at my LinkedIn profile and give me any recommendations?" And so I do that for everybody. It takes up a lot of my time, but I feel like if job seekers are going to reach out to me, the least I can do is provide them with some guidance. And I always take a quick peek at their LinkedIn profile and I give them those suggestions. But this is their way of branding themselves,
That's right.
because companies look at a piece of paper, that's a resume, but I think in conjunction with the resume, they have to have that optimized LinkedIn profile. There's no question about it that this is what all job seekers need to do. And I say take advantage of the real estate, so to speak, in LinkedIn. So if your about section gives you X amount of characters, use it all up. I mean, on my LinkedIn profile, it is optimized. I mean, and I'm constantly looking at it saying, is there anything that I should add? Is there anything that I should take
Mhm.
away? But, making sure that my heading is catchy, making sure I have an up-to-date profile picture, making sure that I list my skills and my accomplishments, trying to get recommendations from other people, because this is what recruiters do. They look on LinkedIn at someone's profile. It provides them the person's job history. It provides them with the duties and responsibilities that someone has in either their current or prior role. So I always highly suggest to job seekers is take advantage of their LinkedIn LinkedIn profile, because that could tell a recruiter or a hiring manager a very compelling story. And you want to make it so those recruiters and hiring managers say, I have to reach out to Melissa Grabiner. I loved her profile. I think she'd be a great fit for this position. You want to give them a reason that is so enticing that they're going to want to call you to have that conversation.
Mm, love it. So, building on that, one of the things that we would talk with a client about is you want to be found for what you want to be found for. So, understanding how a recruiter is using LinkedIn to find talent. And so, finding job descriptions of roles that look really, really interesting to you, and finding what are the common skills, what are the common attributes that they're looking for, and then making sure that your LinkedIn profile is populated excuse me, with those same things, because the
Mm-hmm.
recruiter on the other end of LinkedIn is using those keywords
Right.
to try and find you. And so if you're not using the language of the recruiter, you're making it that much harder for you to be found.
Bob, I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think what a lot of people don't know, and I'll talk about this here, is that a lot of recruiters have what's called a LinkedIn recruiter license. And this
Yep.
is what I have, and this is what I use to find candidates. It allows us to go into LinkedIn and put in keywords. And then based on those keywords, the system will pull up profiles that match those keywords. So if I'm looking to hire, let's say, a HR assistant, what I do is I go into LinkedIn and I'll put in, these are the skills I need. These are either the person's current or former job title. This is the level of education this person needs to have. These are the industries the person needs to come from. I have hired, I can't even tell you how many people through this means of going in LinkedIn, digging deep into the database to find candidates that match the job description as much as possible. I have hired throughout my career easily over 300 people by my proactive sourcing efforts on LinkedIn. So it's really important that job seekers um, they optimize their LinkedIn profile, but try to have any keywords in their profile that's going to pull up if the recruiter does an actual search. I would
Yep.
say the same thing for the resume. A lot of job seekers will say, well, it's so time consuming to create a different resume for each position. And I'm not going to argue with that because it could be time consuming. However, that very well could be the difference of receiving an interview or not.
Well,
So,
so just on the resume piece, I think since November of last year, with the advent of ChatGPT and all the tools that are on top of that now, that this tailoring your resume to a role is not a big deal
mhm,
anymore, because you can run it through JobScan, SkillSync, Resi, any of these tools. They're basically an ATS in reverse, where
mhm,
you put in your resume in one piece, the job description in the other piece. It's going to score your resume. It's going to say, hey, they said CRM and account management 16 times. You don't say it at all. But if those are skills that you've got, that's very easy to add to
mhm,
your resume, the soft skills that they're looking for. So you can, like, literally in a matter of minutes, clean up your resume, make
mhm.
any kind of tweaks that you need to. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Spend time sending out 500 online
Right,
applications and then writing a
right.
LinkedIn post in 6 months saying why nobody ever got back to you,
And that's what happens. I,
right? So it's
yeah.
time very well spent. One of the things I wanted to ask you with LinkedIn, and you kind of said, we've got to talk to her, is how much would you suggest somebody kind of lets their true personality, a little bit of their true self, the human part of them, not just sort of the two-dimensional work producing unit, come through in their LinkedIn profile?
I think it's vitally important. I mean, that is what has allowed me, I believe, to have as many followers as I have, is because I am authentic on LinkedIn. I understand that some people will shy away from that, but when I post about things that can capture the hearts of my followers, and I know that because of all the reactions and comments that I get, people want to be able to relate to other people. People want to be able to relate to people that kind of think the same way, that have empathy for other
Right.
people. And my authentic self is on LinkedIn. I mean, there are posts that I have done that have been really honest, and but those are the posts that resonate the most with people, and I think the platform is a great platform for doing that. I know quite a few people on LinkedIn that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and I think in part it's because their posts are so raw, they're so real, and they're so authentic because
Okay, but
other
hang on.
people
What
really.
I want to know about though is if I'm a candidate and you're the recruiter, two questions. One is, say, like in the about section, like how much should I try and really sort of, show the full human part of me? Like, I'm a mom, I love my dog, I love my kids, and I love to whatever. And I'm an excellent director of marketing. So like I probably said that really poorly, but
No,
like
I know
where
what you
you're really
mean.
kind of showing your full self. And or well, first of all, does that resonate with you as a recruiter, or is that like, hey, too much? Maybe you're oversharing. Like as a recruiter, I'm not sure that's appealing to me. Looking at you as a candidate,
That's a great question, and I think that if you ask this question to 10 people, you might get, different answers from each. At the end of the day, to me, LinkedIn is still a business professional platform. So, like on my page, I don't mention that I have two kids. I mean, I mentioned that I'm a certified yoga instructor because it's something that I'm really proud of and something of what I do. But I don't talk a lot about like my personal life. Like I'll post about my kids like I did last night, but that's more rare. But if you look on my profile, you're not going to see a lot about my. I've been married 25 years. I'm happily married to my great husband. I keep it more on the professional side. I have my posts. That's when I kind of you peel the onion, the layers of the onion back, and that's where I tend to be a little more open about my actual life.
mm.
But I know people on LinkedIn that have their whole life story on there. I personally don't think that is necessary. Um, but if it
As a
works for
as a
them,
recruiter, Melissa, do you read candidates' posts to try and get a little bit of visibility into who they really are?
I do. I don't spend a lot of time doing it just because my time is constrained. I have a incredibly busy job, but definitely. And Bob, I want to actually give you one example of this that I think is so pertinent to this conversation. There is a
Awesome.
gentleman on LinkedIn who had on his profile that he's a stalker. Okay. He is in talent acquisition. So I received a message from him 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. Didn't know him before he reached out to me. He wanted me to look at his profile and give him my thoughts. So when I looked at his profile and it said stalker, I immediately was taken aback because I think if the average person reads this, they're going to be like, "This is kind of creepy. This guy is
Yeah.
saying he's a stalker." So I went back to this gentleman and I said, I really think you should remove the word stalker from your profile. And he writes back and he says, well, I'm in talent acquisition and I think it's a good thing because it's showing companies that I'm proactive, that I'm going to stalk people on LinkedIn. So I went back to him and I said, I don't agree with that and I don't see it that way. I think the vast majority of people that go on LinkedIn um, are going to look at that and be turned off and going to be a little bit scared. So I highly suggested that he removed that word, and I gave him like something else to put in its
Yeah.
place. So he came back to me and he said, no, I don't necessarily agree. Well, the next day he put a poll on his page,
Mm.
and the poll, you know what I mean by a poll,
Yeah.
right? And the poll said, what do you think about me using the word stalker on my profile? So, of course, I looked to see what the results were. And I think it was like 96% of the people agreed with me, and 4% of the people agreed with him. And then the next day, he took off the word stalker on his profile and he wrote me back and he said, I really appreciate you kind of putting this thought into my
Mhm.
mind. I did ask other people and they tended to agree. And I didn't see it from the lens of someone like yourself. But I feel like that is an example of be very careful of what you put out there because the average person that's going to read the word stalker is going to get a little bit creeped out. Like, I don't want to be connected to anyone that is going to stalk
Yeah.
me online. Like, what else are they going to stalk? So, that is a really good example and a real life example of just kind of be cautious and methodical and careful about what you put out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, even that, and we don't need to go down this road too much, but it actually shows a little bit of lack of judgment to me.
Hmm.
That like
For sure.
even if you thought it was okay, like is your emotional intelligence such that you can't understand where a lot of people might be turned off by
Yep.
a term like that? So
Mhm.
whether it's something that's like that's weird, but really silly, really just out of place for,
Mhm.
as you say, the professional forum that is LinkedIn. But having said that, we really try and encourage our members to humanize themselves. So, like, I've got a client who talks about as a child, I always loved watching commercials on TV. I just love storytelling, and commercials are stories. And that's led to my career in marketing where I've been successful. So, he kind of like made it part of the thread, part of the narrative
Mhm.
of how he told his story on LinkedIn. And like to your point, I immediately want to talk to it because he was different. And the thing
Yeah.
about a brand is different. It's not doing the exact same thing everybody else is doing.
Mhm.
If you want to be a commodity, that's cool. Say what everybody else is saying. If you want to be a brand and stand out in people's minds, then you need to do something that's authentic and different, and the
Yes.
right people will resonate with your authenticity and what makes you different, and
Mhm.
that's where you're going to find that's going to be a good home for you.
Mhm. And it's always that balance of, like I don't like like personally for me, I don't think it's necessary to put on my page. I have two boys. These are their ages. This is where they're studying, and this is what they're studying. But
Right.
they're everything to me. I mean, there's nothing more important than my family. So once in a while, I'll post about them, but the post is relevant to other people, like
Yes.
what I posted last night. So
Yep. No, I agree.
mhm,
I want to be mindful of the time because you and I could probably go for like five
all day.
hours on this, no problem. We'll probably just have to do a part two in the not too distant future.
Mhm.
As we start to wind this down, is there, just in your experience of dealing with candidates, and you just like if you had a magic wand that you could wave over candidates just to help them get to where they want to be faster, what are some other little bits of advice that you might give them?
Yeah, the first is just to network as much as possible and then network some more. I mean, I'm a perfect example of the power of networking, which is how as I mentioned earlier, how I found my job. Networking is incredibly vital for one's job search to be successful. And I would also say to job seekers too, and I post about this a lot, is never give up. And I want to be the voice of kind of encouragement for job seekers is just continue to put yourself out there, and you only need one yes, right? You don't need 10 job offers. You want to get that one great offer, but in order to do it, you really got to put in the effort. So jobs aren't necessarily going to become flocking to you. It's up to the job seeker to be proactive, get themselves out there, get their network large, and contact not only who you know, but like people know people and know people, and it's like this domino effect, right? So just tell everyone you know that you're looking for a job. There's no shame in it. Also,
Exactly.
we've all been there at one time or another, and layoffs this year have been rampant, right? And so I know incredibly skilled and amazing people at high levels that have been laid off through no fault of their own. And what I suggest to job seekers is don't be ashamed of being laid off. I mean, it's happened to me, it's happened to my husband, it's happened to pretty much everybody I know. There's no shame in it. This is
Yep.
just the world, unfortunately, that we live in today. But keep networking, try to keep a positive attitude, take care of your mental health, take care of your physical health, prioritize what's important, and just remember that you only need that one job. Just keep
Yeah.
going.
See,
Just keep
see, this
going.
this is why you and I get on so well because in our model, I kind of liken it to sales and marketing. And the marketing is the whole branding piece. The sales
Mhm.
bit is you have a quota. Your quota is one. You need exactly one new job. You don't need to convince the world of
Mhm.
anything. You talked about, earlier, like doing something later, not later, but in your life, like getting your certification in teaching yoga as a yoga instructor. Well, people, and I'm sure you hear a lot about this, like ageism as an example, or
Mhm.
whatever the hurdle is. Well, it doesn't mean that that's not true. It just means you don't need to change the whole world. You need one yes.
Yep.
That's all you need because you only need one job. And
Mhm.
so, you know, don't get too hung up on all the reasons why it won't work or whatever. You only need one yes, and your pursuit is just on the way to that one yes. And
Yeah.
so, the other thing I would just build on what you were saying is the importance of being in community. And I think this is like
Mhm.
where your network does come in really, really handy, is it's very hard to do this by yourself and to kind of get
Yeah.
ginned up every day for this. But when you're in community and some days you're the encourager, some days you're the one who's getting encouragement, you know, these are the things that kind of breathe life into you day after day. And then
Yeah.
last thing I'll say is please follow Melissa on LinkedIn. If not, no, I mean that because we talk a lot about encouragement, empowerment, and enablement, and you're for sure doing the first two. You're encouraging people, but you're empowering them by giving them affirming skills, maybe helping them think about something in a way that they haven't thought about, giving them insight into the life of a recruiter, an HR professional, so they kind of understand how the game works from your side of the equation. But I
Mhm.
just appreciate everything that you're doing. I'm so thankful that we got introduced.
Me
And
too.
I hope that my network gloms onto your network because you're creating amazing content. And I'm just very appreciative for everything that you're doing for job seekers.
And Bob, same to you. Absolutely. And this was so much fun. Really appreciate this conversation, and I wish all the very best to every job seeker out there.
Awesome. Well, and to all the job seekers and people that are maybe even in a career that you don't love, and it's time maybe to start thinking about making a move, just remember that you've got choice, you've got agency. And we just encourage you to follow us at Career Club, follow me, follow Melissa for helpful advice, for encouragement, and to know that you're on a team of people that have your back. We want to see you do well.
Yeah.
So again, last thing, if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, rate and review if you're listening to this as a podcast. But mostly, Melissa, thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Oh, thanks, Bob. My pleasure. You too.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye.
I know